On a small scrap of paper in July 1838, a young man sat down to make one of the most important choices of his life. He was 29 years old, brilliant and deeply worried. He wasn't trying to solve a scientific mystery or map a new continent. He was trying to decide if he should ask his cousin Emma to marry him. He drew a line down the middle of the paper. On the left side, he wrote Mary. On the right side, he wrote not Mary. Under the Mary column, he listed things like constant companion, object to be beloved and played with, and better than a dog anyhow. On the not Mary side, he wrote about the terrible loss of time, the anxiety and responsibility, and having less money for books. This man was Charles Darwin. He was a person who would eventually change how we see the whole world. But at that moment, in a quiet room in London, he was just a guy stuck in his own head. He was terrified that making the wrong choice would ruin his career and his happiness. He was analyzing a feeling as if it were a bug under a microscope. Darwin eventually chose to marry Emma, and by all accounts, they had a very happy life. But his list shows us something important. Even the smartest people in history have felt the heavy weight of a spinning mind. Even a genius can get stuck in a loop, weighing every tiny detail until they feel dizzy. If you are reading this, you probably know exactly how Darwin felt. You know what it is like to stare at a list in your head for hours. You know the feeling of being frozen by too many choices. You know the exhaustion that comes from thinking about a problem so much that the problem itself starts to feel like a monster. The weight of every word. It is 11:45 p.m. in Seattle, Washington. The house is quiet, but Elena Rodriguez's mind is louder than a drum set. She is sitting at her kitchen island, lit only by the blue glow of her laptop. Elena is 34. She is a senior project manager at a big software firm. She is good at her job. She is a wife to Marcus and a mom to 4-year-old Maya. To anyone looking in from the outside, Elena has it all under control. But right now, Elena is staring at a 3-sentence email to her boss. She has been writing and rewriting it for 45 minutes. Hi Sarah, I wanted to follow up on the timeline for the project, she writes. Then she deletes it. Hi Sarah, I'm just checking in to see if you've had a chance to look at the new dates, she tries. She deletes that too. She worries that checking in sounds too pushy. She worries that follow-up sounds too formal. She worries that if she sends it now, she'll look like a workaholic who doesn't have a life. But if she waits until morning, she might forget, and then the project will be late, and her boss will think she's losing her edge. Elena's heart is racing. Her neck is stiff. She is pre-living a disaster that hasn't happened yet. In her head, this one email leads to a bad review, which leads to losing her job, which leads to not being able to pay for Maya's preschool. Suddenly, her finger slips. She hits send before she can check it one last time. A wave of panic hits her. She feels sick to her stomach. She wants to reach into the internet and pull the message back. She spends the next hour wondering if she used the right punctuation. She is physically in her kitchen, but her mind is miles away, stuck in a future that doesn't exist. Elena is a cognitive hoarder. She believes that if she can just gather enough information, if she can just think about every possible failure, she can keep herself safe. She thinks more thought equals more safety. But instead, she is just tired. She is missing out on her own life because she is too busy simulating it in her head. The modern mind under siege. We live in a world that never stops talking. Every day, we are hit with thousands of pieces of information. We have more choices than any humans who have ever lived before us. We can choose from 50 types of cereal, 10,000 movies, and endless career paths. We were told that more choice means more freedom. But for many of us, more choice just means more things to worry about. We have become a society of overthinkers. We replay conversations from 3 years ago. We worry about what a stranger thought of our shoes. We research a new vacuum cleaner for 6 hours because we are afraid of making the wrong choice. This is not a character flaw. It is not because you are weak or too sensitive. In fact, overthinking is often a sign of a very high intelligence. Your brain is a high-performance engine. It is built to solve problems. It is built to keep you safe. The problem is that your brain is still using an old operating system. Thousands of years ago, a bad feeling usually meant a tiger was hiding in the bushes. Today, your brain treats a disapproving look from your boss or a confusing text message from a friend as if it were that same tiger. Your brain starts spinning, trying to find a way to escape a danger that isn't actually there. This creates a mental hamster wheel. You run and run, putting in huge amounts of effort, but you never actually get anywhere. You just end up exhausted. This analysis paralysis steals your sleep, it steals your focus, and most importantly, it steals your ability to be present with the people you love. The promise of a quieter mind. You do not have to live this way. You were not born to be a spectator in your own life, watching the world go by while you argue with yourself in your head. This book is a guide to help you step off that hamster wheel. It is a path to becoming a decisive essentialist. A decisive essentialist is someone who knows that perfect is the enemy of done. They understand that they will never have 100% of the information, and they are okay with that. They trust their gut as much as their logic. They have learned how to observe a thought without becoming that thought. By the time you finish these pages, you will have a new set of tools. You will be able to shut down the midnight worry loops and get the restorative sleep your body needs. Make decisions quickly, from the small stuff like what to eat for dinner to the big stuff like changing your career. Stop pre-living disasters and start living in the actual moment you are in. End the physical fatigue that comes from being in a constant state of mental high alert. Connect deeply with your family and friends because you are actually there when you are with them. We are going to look at how the brain works, but we aren't going to get lost in heavy science. We are going to look at history, but only to see how the world's most effective people handled the same noise you feel today. Why this works. The methods in this book are not just positive thinking or just relax advice. Telling an overthinker to just relax is like telling a person in a rainstorm to just be dry. It doesn't work. Instead, we are going to look at real frameworks. We will look at how a Roman emperor named Marcus Aurelius managed the weight of an entire empire without losing his mind. We will see how Florence Nightingale used data and action to stop the mental spin of a wartime disaster. We will learn from pilots, generals, and scientists who had to make life or death choices with very little time. We will use something called the 70% certainty rule. This is a rule used by high-level leaders to make moves when they have most but not all of the answers. We will learn about pattern interrupts, which are physical ways to jam the gears of a spinning mind in less than 60 seconds. Most importantly, you will see yourself in Alina's journey. As she learns to navigate her high-stress job and her life as a mom without the constant static of overthinking, you will learn alongside her. You will see her setbacks and you will see her breakthroughs. The journey ahead. The path from a cognitive hoarder to a decisive essentialist happens one step at a time. We are going to break it down into manageable parts. The biology of worry. We will find out why your brain refuses to quiet down and how to talk back to your inner security system. Breaking the perfection trap. We will look at why good enough is often better than perfect and how to lower the stakes on your daily choices. The physics of action. We will learn why moving your body is the fastest way to quiet your mind. We will explore the 3-second rule that helps you bypass hesitation. Managing the unknown. We will face the fear of the future and learn how to be okay with things we cannot control. Finding stillness. We will practice ways to empty the cup of your mind so you have room for peace. You have spent enough time thinking about your life. It is time to start living it. You don't need to have all the answers right now. You don't even need to believe that you can change. You just need to be willing to take the first step. The world is chaotic, and it always will be. There will always be emails to send, bills to pay, and futures to plan. But the chaos outside does not have to live inside you. You can find a core of stillness that stays steady even when the wind is blowing. Elena is still sitting at her kitchen island. She is still worried about that email. But she is about to learn that she is not her thoughts. She is the one watching them. And once she knows that, everything changes. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Why does the brain refuse to quiet down? The lights in the laboratory at New York University were a pale, humming yellow. It was the mid-1990s, a time when most people believed the human brain was a slow, logical machine. The common thought was that when you saw something, a dog, a car, or a sunset, the image traveled to the thinking part of your brain first. There, your mind would decide what it was seeing and how to feel about it. It was a neat, orderly system. But Joseph Ledoux, a scientist with a deep curiosity about fear, was about to prove that the brain is much messier and much faster than anyone had imagined. Ledoux was studying how animals react to danger. He spent his days looking at the tiny pathways that carry signals through the brain. One afternoon, he noticed something strange. He saw a pathway that bypassed the thinking part of the brain entirely. It was a low road, a secret shortcut that went straight from the senses to the brain's alarm system. This alarm system is a small, almond-shaped bundle of nerves called the amygdala. While the rest of the scientific world was focused on how we think, Ledoux discovered how we react before we even know why. He found that the brain can trigger a full-blown panic attack in a fraction of a second. By the time your thinking brain even realizes there is a shape in the grass, your alarm brain has already decided it's a snake, pumped your heart full of blood, and made your palms sweat. A few years later, a writer named Daniel Goleman took this discovery and gave it a name that would change how we talk about stress forever: the amygdala hijack. This discovery was a turning point for anyone who has ever felt stuck in their own head. It proved that overthinking isn't a choice we make because we are weak or indecisive. It is a biological survival trick that has gone haywire. In the modern world, we don't face many tigers, but our brains haven't gotten the memo. We treat a "we need to talk" text message from a partner with the same level of life or death panic that our ancestors felt when they heard a growl in the dark. The Emperor's Nightly Battle. Long before scientists had labs and brain scans, people were already trying to figure out why their minds wouldn't stop spinning. In the year 170 AD, a man sat in a dim, drafty tent on the edge of the Roman Empire. Outside, the wind howled across the Danube River. His soldiers were tired, a plague was killing thousands of his people, and his own friends were plotting to take his power. This man was Marcus Aurelius, the Emperor of Rome. He was the most powerful person on earth, but he suffered from the same mental loop that keeps you awake at 3 a.m. He worried about his children. He worried about his reputation. He worried about the future of Rome. Marcus Aurelius didn't have a therapist or a handbook on neuroscience. Instead, he had a journal. Every night, he would sit down and write to himself. He wasn't writing for history books, he was writing to survive his own thoughts. He realized that the world outside his tent wasn't what was causing his pain. It was the way his mind talked about the world. He developed a tool called objective representation. It sounds fancy, but it is actually very simple. He would take a scary thought and strip away all the scary words until only the facts were left. If he was worried about a fancy dinner where people might judge him, he would tell himself, "This expensive wine is just old grape juice. This fine purple robe is just sheep's wool dipped in the blood of a shellfish." By stripping the legend away from his problems, he could see them for what they really were. He realized that his brain was an overactive security guard, always shouting that the sky was falling. He understood that he couldn't stop the thoughts from coming, but he could stop himself from believing every story his brain told him. The three-part security system. To understand why your brain refuses to quiet down, you have to look at it like a high-tech security system for a house that no longer exists. Your brain is not one single thing. It is a collection of parts that often disagree with each other. When you are stuck in an overthinking spiral, it's usually because these three parts are fighting for control. The sensor, the thalamus. Think of this as the lobby of a hotel. Every piece of information, what you see, hear, or touch, comes through here first. Its job is to take that information and send it to the right room. The shortcut, the amygdala. This is the low road Joseph Ledoux discovered. It is a hair trigger alarm. If the sensor sees anything that even looks like a threat, it sends a signal straight here. The amygdala doesn't think. It doesn't check the facts. It just screams, fire, and starts the physical reaction of fear. The analyst, the prefrontal cortex. This is the thinking brain located right behind your forehead. This is the part of you that does math, plans for retirement, and tries to decide if that email was actually mean or just short. It is slow, it uses a lot of energy, and it is easily tired out. The problem with overthinking is that the analyst and the shortcut are in a constant tug of war. Imagine you are sitting at your desk, and your boss walks by without saying hello. The sensor sees this. Before you can even blink, the shortcut, the amygdala, has already reacted. It remembers every time someone was mad at you. It sends a jolt of anxiety through your chest. Your heart starts to beat faster. Now the analyst, your thinking brain, steps in. It tries to fix the anxiety by figuring it out. It says, okay, why didn't she say hi? Is she mad about that report? Did I say something wrong in the meeting? If I get fired, how will I pay rent? This is the birth of the safety loop. Your thinking brain believes that if it can just find the answer to the problem, the alarm will stop ringing. But the alarm, the amygdala, doesn't speak English. It only speaks in feelings and chemicals. The more you analyze the problem, the more the amygdala thinks the threat is real, which makes it scream louder. You are trying to put out a fire with a can of gasoline. Why smart brains overthink more? There is a cruel irony in overthinking. The smarter and more creative you are, the better your brain is at scaring you. High intelligence is like having a supercomputer in your head. It is great for solving complex problems at work, but when that supercomputer turns on you, it can simulate 1,000 different ways for your life to go wrong. Overthinking is often called the disease of the wise. If you didn't have a great memory, you wouldn't be able to replay a conversation from 3 years ago and cringe at what you said. If you didn't have a great imagination, you wouldn't be able to pre-live a disaster that hasn't happened yet. Your brain uses a process called rumination. The word ruminate actually comes from how cows eat. A cow will eat grass, swallow it, and then bring it back up to chew on it again. And again. And again. Overthinkers do the exact same thing with thoughts. We take a bite of a worry, swallow it, and then bring it back up to chew on it for another 3 hours. We do this because we believe, deep down, that thinking is the same thing as doing. We think that if we worry enough about a plane crash, we are somehow making the plane safer. We think that if we replay a mistake enough times, we are learning our lesson. But there is a massive difference between productive thought and destructive rumination. Productive thought leads to a plan. It says, the car is making a noise. I will call the mechanic on Monday. Destructive rumination goes in a circle. It says, the car is making a noise. I bet it's the engine. I can't afford a new engine. I'm so irresponsible. Why didn't I get the oil changed? I'm going to end up walking to work. I'll probably be late and get fired. The second version doesn't fix the car. It just makes you too tired to pick up the phone. Reclaiming the remote control. When Marcus Aurelius was struggling with his own mental loops, he realized something that modern science now confirms. He wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If you spend all day thinking about everything that could go wrong, your internal world becomes a dark, scary place. You start to see threats everywhere. This is because of a feature in your brain called the reticular activating system, RAS. This is a filter that decides what information is important enough to notice. If you decide you want to buy a red car, you suddenly start seeing red cars everywhere. They were always there, but your Ross was filtering them out. Now, it thinks they are important. Overthinking works the same way. When you focus on what-ifs and mistakes, you are training your brain's filter to look for more problems. You are literally dyeing your soul with worry. The first step to quieting the mind is realizing that you are not the voice in your head. You are the person listening to that voice. Think about that for a second. If you can hear a thought like, "I'm going to fail," then there must be two parts of you, the part that said it and the part that heard it. The part that heard it, the observer, is who you really are. The voice is just the shortcut, and the analyst trying to earn their keep. When the amygdala hijack happens, your thinking brain gets kicked out of the driver's seat. Your ancient emotional brain takes the wheel. It is a terrible driver. It overreacts, it ignores the signs, and it refuses to stop for gas. To get back in control, you have to recognize the physical feeling of the hijack. You might feel a tightness in your chest. Your breathing might get shallow. Your mind might start to race. This is the low road in action. Most of us try to fight this by thinking more. We try to argue with the feelings. But as we learned from Joseph Ledoux, the feelings have a head start. You can't talk your way out of a physiological alarm. You have to wait for the chemicals to clear. The bodyguard in the basement. It helps to view your overthinking brain as a very loyal, but very stupid bodyguard. Imagine you have a bodyguard who lives in your basement. He loves you and wants you to be safe. But he has been stuck in that basement since the Stone Age. He doesn't know what a Zoom call is. He doesn't understand credit scores. He only knows big animal with teeth and getting kicked out of the tribe. When you make a small mistake on a project, the bodyguard sees your heart rate go up. He panics. He thinks, the tribe is going to kick us out. We will starve in the woods. He starts banging on the pipes, screaming at you to do something. You upstairs feel that screaming as overthinking. You start pacing. You start checking your email every 30 seconds. You are trying to satisfy the bodyguard in the basement. But you will never satisfy him by overthinking. The only way to quiet the bodyguard is to show him that there is no tiger. You do this through action and through the knowledge of calm. You have to teach your brain that a disapproving look from a boss is not a death threat. It is just information. Moving toward the light. The discovery of the low road was a breakthrough because it took the shame out of anxiety. It showed that we aren't broken. We are just equipped with a security system that is too sensitive for the modern world. Think back to the lab at NYU. Joseph Ledoux wasn't trying to find a way to delete fear. He knew that fear is what keeps us alive. Without that low road, our ancestors would have been eaten by the first thing that rustled in the bushes. We don't want to kill the bodyguard, we just want to give him a pair of glasses so he can see clearly. As we move forward, we are going to use the tools of both the scientist and the emperor. We will use the biology of the brain to understand why we feel this way, and we will use the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius to change how we respond to those feelings. Overthinking is like a heavy anchor you've been dragging behind you while trying to swim. You've become so used to the weight that you think the struggle is just a part of swimming. You think that if you just kick harder, the anchor won't matter. But the secret isn't in the kicking. The secret is in reaching down and unhooking the chain. The quiet you are looking for isn't in a world where nothing goes wrong. It's in a mind that knows it can handle whatever happens. It's the feeling of the analyst and the shortcut, finally shaking hands and agreeing to work together. Tonight, if you find yourself staring at the ceiling, replaying a moment that can't be changed, or fearing a moment that hasn't happened yet, try to remember the laboratory and the tent. Remember that your brain is just trying to save your life in a world that isn't trying to kill you. The heart that is racing is a heart that is healthy and ready to protect you. The mind that is spinning is a mind that is powerful and full of energy. You don't need to break your brain. You just need to learn how to drive it. There is a quiet place inside you that the safety loop cannot reach. It is the place where you are the observer, not the victim of your thoughts. It is a place of stillness, even when the world is loud. We are going to find that place, and we are going to learn how to stay there. The anchor is heavy, but the chain is not as strong as you think. It is time to let go. Chapter 2: The Infinite Loop: How Thinking Becomes a Trap. David sits at his kitchen table, the blue light of his laptop reflecting in his tired eyes. It is 11:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. He has 17 browser tabs open, and every single one of them is a review for a coffee maker. He has spent the last 4 hours reading about burr grinders, extraction pressure, and thermal carafes. He has a spreadsheet comparing prices across 5 different websites. He knows more about the internal mechanics of a mid-range espresso machine than most professional repairmen. The problem is that David doesn't even like coffee that much. He just wants a simple way to make a cup for his wife in the morning. But as he clicks from one 5-star review to a 3-star cautionary tale, a familiar feeling begins to rise in his chest. It's a tightening, a sort of mental static. He feels like if he picks the wrong one, he is failing. He imagines the machine leaking on the counter. He imagines the coffee tasting like burnt plastic. He imagines his wife's disappointed face. So he keeps reading. He tells himself he is being thorough. He tells himself he is a smart consumer. In reality, David is trapped. He is in the middle of a mental loop that has no exit sign. He thinks that more information will eventually lead to a feeling of safety. He believes that if he can just find one more piece of data, the perfect choice will reveal itself, and his anxiety will vanish. But the opposite is happening. The more he reads, the more confused he gets. His brain is spinning like a car tire stuck in deep mud, lots of noise, lots of smoke, but zero forward movement. David is a victim of the infinite loop, a trap where thinking stops being a tool for solving problems and starts being a way to avoid them. This isn't just about coffee makers. This is the same loop David falls into when he has to send an email to his boss, or when he's deciding whether to go to the gym, or when he's wondering if he said something weird at dinner 3 years ago. It's a pattern of the mind that treats every thought as a life or death mission. To understand why David, and why you, get stuck in this loop, we have to look back at a time when this kind of over-planning led to one of the biggest disasters in human history. The plan that could not bend. In the early 1900s, the leaders of the German army were obsessed with a single problem. They were located right in the middle of Europe, with enemies on both sides. To the west was France, and to the east was Russia. They were terrified of being attacked from both directions at once. They believed that if a war started, they would be crushed by the sheer weight of 2 different armies. To solve this, a man named Count Alfred von Schlieffen spent years creating a perfect plan. It was called the Schlieffen Plan, and it was perhaps the most overthought document in the history of warfare. Schlieffen didn't just write a general idea. He wrote a script for every single minute of a potential war. He calculated exactly how many trains would be needed to move soldiers. He figured out how many grams of bread each horse would eat. He mapped out every road in Belgium and France. The plan was a massive looping circuit of if this, then that. It was designed to be so perfect that it left no room for doubt. The German generals loved it. It gave them a sense of total control. They believed that because they had thought about everything, nothing could go wrong. When World War I actually broke out in August 1914, the Germans pulled the Schlieffen Plan off the shelf. They began to follow the loop. But almost immediately, reality started to act differently than the plan. The Belgian army fought back harder than expected. The Russian army moved faster than the German math said they would. The roads were muddier than the maps showed. In a healthy mind or a healthy army, this is the moment where you stop, look at the new data, and change your mind. But the German generals were stuck in the Schlieffen loop. They had spent so many years thinking about this specific plan that they couldn't see the world as it actually was. They were so committed to their perfect mental model that they ignored the truth right in front of them. Instead of adapting, they tried to force the world to fit their thoughts. They pushed their soldiers harder, ignored the warning signs, and kept following the script. Because they were so afraid of a long, messy